So welcome again. My name is Michelle Canon and I'm a lecturer at the UCL Institute of Education in London. And I'm interested in digital media in education, particularly the importance of film and media production and moving image literacy for primary school children. So that's where I'm coming from, and maybe we will touch on that at some point. But in fact, the primary concerns of the panelists here are for slightly older children. So I'd just like to thank the Film Education Journal conference team for just giving us these rare opportunities to discuss, debates and issues of the day. And thank you all attendees for supporting us in these ever increasing numbers, which is good to see, to just address the debates that we have going on right now, one of which is how to assess learning in film education. And perhaps we'll also be attending to other questions that spin out from that, kind of central debate as well. So, as I say, we're going to hear from 4 speakers, but in fact there's 5, because as you can see, one of our speakers is in fact 2 speakers. And they're a married couple, Laszlo and Anette from Hungary. And they're going to be talking to us about the ways in which they've developed film education programs and content and assessment strategies via their Hungarian Media Education Association. And this has been happening for over 25 years. So they have some things to say and offer. And also through their international projects and collaborations with, for example, the British Film Institute and numbers of other European agencies over the years. And they have some interesting statistics and strategies to share with us a bit later. Our next speaker is based in Northern Ireland. It's David Bradley from the Dalriada, have I said that right? I'm sorry, the Dalriada School in County Antrim in Northern Ireland. He's been a teacher for over 20 years and is also the chief examiner for the Moving Image Arts qualification, or the MIA qualification. It's a formal qualification in Northern Ireland and other places for 16 and 18-year-olds. And it was developed in the 2000s by a number of film education specialists, some here present probably, and he'll be telling us about the practices that have developed over the years, some of the wider interesting effects that film education strategies are having in the school environment in Northern Ireland. Our third speaker is Dr. Laura Findlay. She's currently a project manager at Screen Education Edinburgh, overseeing the Edinburgh City Film Education Programme in partnership with a number of other creative and arts agencies. Previously, Laura worked as a lecturer in English and film studies at the University of Dundee. And she will be talking to us from the perspective of informal educational environments where the Moving Image Arts qualification is being delivered. And this is via organisations in various parts of Scotland. And we'll look forward to hearing about this, how it's been taken up by older learners up to 25 years of age, and some of the assessment issues therein. And finally, I'd like to introduce Jon Echeverria from the organisation known as ABAUCU in Barcelona, which is part of a film education programme called Cinema en Curs. This programme was set up by, some of you may know, Nuria Edelman and Laia Collet in the early 2000s. Nuria and Laia couldn't be with us here today, so thanks to Jon for stepping in for them. So after his postdoctoral fellowship at the University of der Kunst in Berlin, Jon set up the German version of Cinema en Curs and another called Moving Cinema in Berlin. And in summer last year, he became part of the ABAUCU team. And I think it's fair to say that this team works really closely with teachers and secondary school age children in Catalonia and nationally and internationally. And these practices are located in the formal school day and are resonant of the kinds of practices that we heard earlier from Nathalie in the Centre Jeunesse tradition, I think we can start to call that now. Bringing a different perspective on cultures of assessment. So I think you'll see we've got a kind of rich palette of professional experiences here on which we hopefully will be reflecting on the role and the nature of learning assessment, as well as the nature of the context and the structures in which these practices are embedded. And you know, what the kinds of things that have to be negotiated. So we'll hear from everybody first, as I say, and I'd like to invite Laszlo and Anette to start us off by sharing some of their work in the Hungarian context.
Thank you, Michelle. So welcome you all from the now finally sunny, summery Budapest. It's an honor for us to speak at the conference about the Hungarian film and media graduation, maturity, baccalaureate, or kind of A-level exam, according to the English GCSE system's name. Or it's hard to find a proper English name for this pre-university qualification, which has different and similar role in the education system of other countries. So I might refer on the exam in different names, but try to clarify what the exam is, what it consists of, and how it fits into our system. A brief introduction of ourselves first. So Laszlo has been involved in the development of exam concept from the early 2000s. For 15 years, he has been the chairman of the committee whose members develop the tasks and the marking scale on the basis of which teachers assess students' works every year. I taught film theory and film analysis at separate universities, and Laszlo and I conducted several film workshops for teachers and students. We have worked together for a long time in the field of film education, and I have been helping with the assessment work as an expert since 2010. Interestingly, for the organizers, the Hungarian exam system is inspired by the ideas of the innovative, creative English teachers in English schools. Laszlo spent 3 weeks in England in 1998, visiting schools and lessons in different parts of the country and using his observations to design the examination system. The destination schools teachers, like in Sheffield, in Oxford, in London, were suggested by Kerry Bazalgett, then head of the BFI. So get to the details. We first need to outline the context of the exam. We have a compulsory subject in formal education in secondary schools in the last 20 years, which called Moving Image Culture and Media Knowledge. Since 2005, it has been possible to take an optional graduation exam twice a year of this subject. Students in Hungary take graduation exams for compulsory subjects: Hungarian language and literature, mathematics, history, and foreign language. The fifth compulsory elective subject, which candidates can choose from a number of other subjects, for instance, biology, physics, geography, art history, visual culture, drama, and so on, and also the above mentioned moving image culture and media knowledge as well. There is a strong motivation to choose the subject in which the result, the score, is taken into account in the university admission procedure. Currently, no admission points for moving image culture and media knowledge exam results, but this regulation may be amended from 2023. So there is no particular motivation for students, unfortunately, to take an exam in moving image culture and media knowledge, but they still do, fortunately. Around 65,000 students graduate from high school in Hungary every year. According to 15 years of experience, an average of 1,200 students choose film and media. A student can take an intermediate exam or a more difficult advanced exam. Those applying for higher education have to pass an advanced level exam, which is why some people also opt for the advanced level film and media exam. The exam consists two parts of parts at intermediate level and 3 parts at advanced level. Can we show the PPT form at this point? If you can have, Jimmy, thanks. So it's a kind of I try to show the model of the exam. There is as you see, there is an intermediate and an advanced level, and the first part of the exam is a project preparation, which involves solving 2 project assignments at intermediate level and 3 project assignments at advanced level. Candidates have to choose one of 3 practical and 3 essay tasks. If you are taking the advanced level, you will have to solve a third, slightly more difficult problem by choosing one of the 3 given options. The tasks are published by the Education Office 6 months before the deadline. Projects can be worth 25 points at intermediate level and all of them 20 points at advanced level. The second part of the exam, as you can see, is a written test. This takes place on the afternoon of the day of the exam, between 2 and 5 o'clock p.m. Each candidate will take the test in his/her own school. The worksheet consists 3 parts, so it's the written test consists 3 parts. There is a knowledge assessment part, there is a cinematic comprehension part, and a short media essay. A cinematic comprehension is solving a series of questions related to a film clip of about 10 minutes, but they can watch it twice at the beginning of the exam. A short media essay based on a specific phenomenon, a text published in or about the media, and it can be worth different kind of points. Finally, candidates at the advanced level will see the oral test if they reach the minimum score required. In the oral test, students will choose one of 12 cinematographic and 12 media items and explain their topic in 10 minutes, for which they will receive 15 points per item. The written test is worth together 50 points at intermediate level and 60 points at advanced level, but it's more worth to see the percentage of the which you can see on the PPT. For teachers marking project work and written test paper, scoring will be carried out according to the marking keys published online. These correction keys give the correct answers or several acceptable answers choices. In the case of film reading comprehension, the correcting teacher may accept other valid answers that can be justified by the film extract and the correction key. So a few words about the project work. For the practical project task, it can be an etude, a series of photographs, film extract, radio piece, must be produced within the given length range, based on some inspiring or creative material, photo, lyrics, film clip, and so on. In all cases, the work submitted must be accompanied by a so-called work diary. The work diary is very important. It should outline the concept, the rationale for the decisions taken during implementation, and include self-reflective statements on the finished work. The worksheet is essential in the assessment because it demonstrates which is the key aspects of the exam. Conversely, talent is not accountable. I can say 1 or 2 examples of the practical exercises. For example, just one task I can read, or 2 at least. For example, one of these, making a video scenes. So I read the task. A burglar alarm goes off. The house is banged up by the loud, shrill sound of the device. Create 2 film scenes, minimum 3, maximum 4 minutes each, based on this situation. The first version should be a documentary. The second version should be an excerpt from a short film. Provide an account of the process length specified in the exam requirements. in which you present the basic concept, the process of preparation, construction, and the possible problems that occurred during your work and their solution, and your own evaluation of the completed material. And another one is making of an interview. Make a structured interview which should be minimum 5 and maximum 8 minutes in length with a district nurse about the situation, difficulties, and problems of teenage motherhood and his experience of it. Attached to the interview a process report, the length of which is prescribed in the exam description, in which you outline the phases of the preparation for the work and the aspects of the choice of the interviewee. Describe how you prepared for and how you organized the interview, in what circumstances the shooting took place, and then demonstrate the criteria according to which you edited the rough material. So there is 2 examples of the practical test. For the essay task, it's essential the candidates construct the text within the framework and according to the criteria given in the given task. Stick to the structure of the essay, a specific form of the text, not generally presenting material collected on a given film or director. I also want to say an example of the essay test. Like for example, melodramatic characteristics of My Blueberry Nights. It's an analytical essay. Write an essay length specified in the exam requirements about Wong Kar-wai's My Blueberry Nights, in which you analyze the film as a specific piece of contemporary melodrama. Base your analysis on a minimum of 3 aspects that result from the melodramatic genre and at least 2 key scenes that are appropriate to illustrate genre characteristics. You don't have to include other contemporary melodramas in your analysis. And project assignments are independent works, but students can consult the teacher who can recommend materials, control the schedule of the assignment, and may propose additional aspects. A few words about the written test, which I bring a few examples from 1 year's task, which analyzes the passenger or the introductory scene of the Passenger by Antonioni. The first question of the reading comprehension test always asks the candidate to state some easily observable and justifiable fact or facts, something that is essential for interpretation. Observations and the characters usually follow in the sequel. In the second part of the reading comprehension test, the task concerned the use of film language devices. We see the essence of film analysis in the fact that intuitions about the interpretation can be confirmed or refuted by the close linguistic analysis of the film text. In the final part of the test, there are exercises that can be related to the detail and presumably the whole film, capturing the essence of the film form and the film itself. So the few examples from the Passenger is just for the first questions, just picking one. What is the occupation of the character in the check shirt, referred as Locke and played by Jack Nicholson? When the dead man's room is searched, there is only one object that visibly surprises the main character. What is it? To the second part, there is a few questions based on observations, and in this case, you have to tell it's true or false. And define briefly the time organizing effect of the individual montage types. It's just a few examples picking up from that test. The oral test is only involved, as you see, at advanced level, and also there if they reach the minimum score required. So they can choose from 12 cinematographic and 12 media items, and I just bring a few examples for it. Just for the third, list at least 3 typical types of montage and describe their use with suitable examples. Another one, interpret with typical film examples the concepts of story, plot, and narrative in cinematic narration. And another one, describe the stylistic features of German Expressionism, its most important artists and works. And now we can jump to the statistics. If you can show the charts, yeah. It's between 2005 and 2017, as you can see. 88.7% of candidates attended upper secondary school and 10.8% attended vocational upper secondary school. This is the percentage distribution of exam results, as you see here. We can see the next one. Yes. And this is a little bit shows the problem we have here. As you see the first chart there, as the results show, project work is overemphasized by teachers. Firstly, because they overestimate the work of the students. They are touched by the fact that students have put in so much work. And secondly, because it's still an optional, so it's a fifth subject on A level, so they do not want students' overall results to be lower because of that. This, of course, needs to change to get a more realistic pictures, and we are working on it already. Since 2005, about 140 practical and 140 essay exercises have been added to the database. In addition, there are 44 complete comprehension tests, sorry about that, based on 40 film clips. These tests are accompanied by an average of 8 to 10 passages, which means that in total there are nearly 400 tasks measuring film reading comprehensions, and all of them with a complete correction key and evaluation system. Most of them are only available in Hungarian, but the ones between 2007 and 2010 are also available in English, thanks to an English teacher who taught in a bilingual high school and whose students asked to take moving image culture and media knowledge exams in English. So the education authority had it translated. Unfortunately, the teacher died recently, and since then there were no requests for English language graduates. So that is the only translated material, but it's still a huge base for a source. If you want to check it, we can send a link to it, and you can use it to your work. In brief, that's what I wanted to say, but if you have any question, I'm happy to reply for that. Thank you very much.
Wow, thanks, Anette and Laszlo. That was truly comprehensive journey through the workings of a really kind of detailed curriculum that you have there, that clearly the fruit of many years of experience. Thank you for that. And if I could invite any questions, not that we're going to address them right now, but please do put them in the Q&A or in the chat if you wish to know any more about this programme or this curriculum and assessment procedures. I found that graph, just to interject slightly at this point, that the graph at the end was particularly interesting, the shape of it, and I'm sure we'll pick up on that, the note you mentioned there, Annette, about the business of how teachers can be objective in the measurement of effort, let's say. Okay, so thank you again. David, can I invite you to the floor?
You certainly can, yes. So I'll just share my screen here with everybody. Okay. So as Michelle already said, I'm David Bradley. I've been teacher for 20 plus years. I teach in a grammar school in Northern Ireland. So I'll be teaching art and moving image arts, which is a filmmaking course. During that time as well, I've been kind of various roles within CCEA, which is our exam authority here in Northern Ireland. So writing specifications, and then being chief examiner or principal moderator for both the GCSE and A-level moving image arts specifications. So just going to take you through sort of quickly what moving image arts is and how it works, and sort of issues around the assessment of that, and not only that, but how it impacts a moving image arts specification or a filmmaking specification impacts the wider sort of community within schools. So a wee brief history. You'll have heard of some of these names before. So way back in sort of turn of the millennium, really. So Ian Wall and Carrie Bazagate, then at that stage, they had this idea for a GCSE or an A-level in sort of in moving image arts, a filmmaking, a practical filmmaking course that could be taught in schools. So what they did at that stage is they shopped that around all of the different exam boards throughout the UK, and it's settled with us in Northern Ireland, and it settled there because for a number of reasons. We sort of developed the specification in cooperation with sort of Northern Ireland Screen, and at that time Northern Ireland Screen were they were really expanding, sort of a lot more productions were kind of coming here, and we realized that we actually needed sort of a skilled workforce to be able to actually service that kind of new sort of screen industry. The Nerve Centre then is one of our creative learning centres within Northern Ireland. They were set up to support schools in sort of music education, film education, sort of things now with sort of digital literacy, sort of things like sort of 3D printing and things like like that kind of thing. That's what the Nerve Centre and the learning centres take care of. And then obviously CCA is the Northern Ireland's exams authority. So together we wrote this thing called Moving Image Arts. It started off as a pilot way back in 2002, so almost 20 years ago. That's quite scary. So with 7 Northern Irish schools, my own school was part of that. So it was like one of those original 7. We now have over 50 something centres doing GCSE, and sort of on and off over 60 centres doing A-level moving image arts. It started with a standalone AS level, and then it moved into an A-level, so it was like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And then way back in 2005, I think it was, before we finally actually wrote the GCSE specification. So things took an interesting sort of path to sort of being birthed. A few other wee interesting things are that moving image arts was the first specification in the UK to offer a fully paperless exam. Now that's not just the pupils actually taking the exam, but that was actually the marking of the exam as well. So it's completely paperless, sort of end to end. And that has worked remarkably well. It is just a great way to be able to assess sort of the kids' knowledge, because it's, if none of you have seen it before, it's the exam is like a website kind of interface, and the candidates have complete control over it. So it'll show them sort of still images, film clips, other kind of, like sort of excerpts from screenplays. They have sort of practical tasks to do within their exam, and then obviously they have analysis questions to do as well. So like that online exam is really fit for purpose, and the kids actually enjoy doing it. We get that feedback every year. So I'm not going to read through these. You can kind of read those yourself, but essentially what moving image arts is, it is a practical course, and through doing the practical work, then they learn the theory that they will need to actually be able to sort of excel in the exam. So the real sort of focus on it is sort of being able to sort of give them creative opportunities to write and direct and produce and edit their own films. Now, one of the things about moving image arts is that we have had to develop it. I'll come to this in the next slide. We've had to develop under the existing conditions around assessment. with assessment objectives and sort of within the structures that we have available to us. So, but I've lost my train of thought there. So let's just move on to this bit anyway. So the moving image arts, it's basically the GCSE is made up of 3 components. So we have the first unit is an exam unit. It's an hour and a half. I've already said that it's an online examination, and it's really there to test their understanding of mainly of film language. So they have to analyze film language elements and their knowledge of genre. So at GCSE level, that is what they are looking at. So it's film language and genre. When they move to AS and A level, then that sort of broadens out really quickly. So they start off with classical Hollywood style. So then they'll look at Hitchcock and pure cinema, and then they'll move on to German expressionism and poetic realism. And so like you can kind of see where they start with, GCSE starts with film language and genre, those core areas. And then at AS and A2, then it explodes out from there. The second component then in the GCSE is this notion of acquisition of skills. So they have 4 little mini tasks to do in GCSE Moving Image Arts. The first one of those is a storyboarding task. So like that's kind of self-explanatory, where they're thinking then that's their introduction really to not only sort of to storyboarding, but essentially to camera and to editing. So they're making those kind of choices, but in a storyboard form. The second task then is a camera and editing task, where they are given a piece of screenplay and they have to shoot, they have to go away and plan what shots they're going to take and how they're going to edit them together. And then they actually do that. They go away, shoot what they've written in their shot lists and come into the sort of editing suites and edit the stuff together. And that's their second piece of coursework. The third piece of coursework then is a sound design task. And it's probably the most fun task on the GCSE, because we actually give them a piece from a film, but it's got no sound on it. So they have to then reconstruct that through creating their own Foley effects, sort of finding sort of atmospheric kind of music to put into it. They can kind of then obviously download royalty-free kind of soundtracks and things like that as well, and then edit all of those together to create or to recreate a believable soundscape for that clip. The last task then is an animation task, and we were wanting to give them just a broad range of experiences. So the animation task exists there because in earlier versions of Moving Image Arts, for the main unit that we'll come to talk about in a wee second, they could have produced a film or an animation, but very few were choosing to do animation. So we wanted to encourage all of the pupils to have experience of that. So the animation task is really simple. What we actually ask them to do is we give them 4 little prompts. So they'll get 4 little sort of audio clips with a voice telling a little character on screen what to do. And then instead of building their own character and building sets and everything like that, so we weren't interested in that. So what we told them to do was to get a jointed toy or a mannequin or something like that. So, there's a lot of kind of wrestlers kind of appear in it, those ones with lots of sort of elbows and knees and sort of ankle joints and things like that. So they were then told to then animate those little characters in reaction to the voice files. So, and the whole focus of it is in the actual animation itself, the fluidity of movement and sort of the emotion that's imbued into the animation. So it is probably the hardest of those 4 tasks in that component 2. Component 2 would be done in the first year of the course. The second year of the course then is component 3, which is they have to make their own 2-minute short film. And that is right the way through sort of planning, writing their screenplay, drawing their storyboards, creating a thing called a director's notebook. So their director's notebook really is all of their visual planning for it. So think about kind of people like sort of Danny Boyle and Guillermo del Toro. They've quite famously sort of, there's good resources there to look at how they sort of come up with the ideas for the film. So that's essentially what they're doing as well. And so by planning this film, then they go through and actually then shoot it themselves. They edit it themselves. And that's the point where I lost my sort of train of thought earlier, is that the making films is not, you know, an isolated thing. So to make films, you have to work within a team. But again, because of the assessment structure, we can't assess sort of teamwork. So because they have to get individual grades for these things. So that's what we insist on in Moving Image Arts, is that they are in creative control. So they must, for this unit in particular, they must write their own screenplay. They must shoot their own film. If they want to be in the film, there is a wee caveat where we can say that they can get somebody else to shoot it, but they have to direct, and the person shooting the film has to follow their sort of storyboard kind of structure. And then to maintain, again, creative control, they have to edit their final film as well. So that's a very brief overview of what Moving Image Arts is. As I said before, Moving Image Arts was created, and it's not perfect, the assessment of Moving Image Arts, because we had to create it within the structures and the frameworks that already existed. So the structures and frameworks that we all understand, like assessment objectives. So there had to be assessment objectives. And we went back and forward with Ofqual, which obviously is the Office for Qualifications throughout the whole of the UK. Northern Ireland is slightly separate from that, in that we are our own regulatory authority as well. But because we wanted this specification to be available to sort of schools in England, and Scotland, and Wales, and further afield, it's actually taught in Malaysia. We've got a couple of centres in Singapore as well who are doing this specification. So that's why we went through those steps of sort of abiding by Ofqual's kind of requests on it. So, but what they did was they insisted that Moving Image Arts had to be comparable to both media studies and art and design. So we went back and forth a lot during that kind of time, because we thought that that was kind of quite unfair. Really, where Moving Image Arts sits is more in the art and design camp. It's an arts related specification. And you can kind of see that from the assessment objectives that you've kind of got on the screen there. So the first assessment objective was really all about knowledge and understanding, particularly of film language and genre. The second assessment objective is more about their kind of technical knowledge and capability. So things like, their actual skill in sort of creating nice, smooth camera moves, their skill in creating multi-layered soundtracks. So it's those creative and technical skills. The second part of that, AO2B, then is more about the planning side of that. So that's, is slightly different in that it's about managing resources, about being able to make a film with what they have access to. Again, the screenplay, the storyboards, the director's notebooks, the things that we've already talked about. And then the third assessment objective is really about then analysing not only the work of others, but their own work as well, to see how successful it is. And that really comes through in their evaluations and again in the exam content. Now, why I said the assessment wasn't perfect is that there are elements of Moving Image Arts that are key, but they are not assessed. Kids get no marks for them at all. Things like their interpersonal skills. So you can imagine for 15 or 16-year-old to go out and actually be able to direct their friends, be able to actually wrangle their friends and get a performance out of them and get them to do what they actually want them to do. That is a really key transferable skill. Their wider project management skills comes into that as well, and their resourcefulness. In Moving Image Arts, we never talk about, it's zero budget filmmaking, and that's the basis for everybody. So it doesn't actually matter what equipment you have available to you. It's about what you do with it. How creative can you be? So we don't really care if you're shooting on a 20-year-old DV camera, or your mum or your dad's hand-me-down iPhone from 10 years ago. Like, that really doesn't matter. It's about what you're actually doing with those things. So hopefully that gives you a wee bit of an understanding of what Moving Image Arts is. But what I really wanted to talk about as well in assessment is then the wider impact of not just Moving Image Arts, but a specification like Moving Image Arts. So like a pure kind of, not film studies or media studies, but, a film education or a practical film education course. And where that sort of showed up in sort of here in Northern Ireland in our sort of Northern Ireland curriculum was in these things called the levels of progression for ICT. Now I'll explain what these are in a wee second, but essentially whenever we got to moving image arts, we thought this is quite different. There's been nothing like this in our curriculum before. How do we prepare children to get to that stage? Because we wanted to offer them a scaffold or stepping stones rather than just throwing them in at the deep end. So the levels of progression are these things. So like these are the levels of progression for primary schools. So kids at sort of key stage 2, between sort of like 7, 8-year-olds up to 11 years old. And you can see that there's 5, you probably can't read the text, which is all right, but there's 5 strands in those. So we wanted the same levels of progression to carry over between what was being taught in primary schools to what is being taught then in secondary schools. So again, from 11 to sort of 14, 15-year-olds. And you can see there the way that they're exactly the same levels, except for key stage 3, we've got level 6 and 7 in there as well. Now, the reason that this is important is that we knew that these things were not being taught in schools at that time. So you can see these were first used way back in 2013, 2014. So we knew that the digital literacy sort of in many schools was kind of poor, to put it sort of bluntly. So we wanted all children to have access to these things. So one more slide here. You can see here, this is the descriptor for a level 5. So this is what children kind of have to do to get a level 5 in their ICT, but you can see how it is a real grounding for what they would need to do in moving image arts or in any film education kind of degree. So they have to process found and self-produced assets. They need to be able to integrate text, sound, still or moving images, and then they need to communicate their work. And this is the bit demonstrating a clear understanding of audience and purpose. So that level 5, that is what we are expecting all 11 or 12-year-olds to be able to do. So that's part of our sort of, our mission. Now, is this happening in schools? Yes, it is happening in schools. Is it happening at all schools? Probably not. So it should be happening in all schools in Northern Ireland, but again, it's an imperfect system, but this is where we expect all 11 or 12-year-olds to be by that stage. Also then, within schools that are teaching moving image arts, and again, I'm basing this on my own centre, these are the things that we kind of find. So film education at key stage 3 is, I'm going to actually jump right to the bottom, the end of this, to help explain this slide. Without a specific film education qualification being offered within our centre, would we have done any of this stuff at key stage 3? And the blunt answer to this is probably not. But because we are teaching, we offer GCSE moving image arts and AAS and A2 moving image arts, then we want to give all of the junior school pupils enough information so that they can make a wise choice whenever they are choosing what subjects they're going to do for GCSE or A-level. So we sort of decided a way back that within art, we were going to cover all of these things. So like a wee flavour of those things are that in year 8, all of the kids do storyboarding tasks, and then they also make a paper cut animation. So again, that's a really kind of fun tasks. It's based on like an under the sea kind of theme that they kind of do. Year 9, then we're moving on, and we start that sort of, for the year 8 task. So they need to understand camera sort of, like framing kind of conventions. They need to understand editing, and then they get practical experience of those things as well. Moving on to year 9, then we're looking at the concept then of genre with them. So again, like sort of 12 or 13-year-olds, we actually study it's a really fun task that we could do with them, and it's a spaghetti western based around a fistful of dollars, or it's actually from the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. So we actually watch the Mexican shootout sequence from The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and then they make their own little film called A Fistful of Jaffa Cakes, which is basically a standoff around a plate, and there's only one Jaffa cake left. So now they say, they have their close-ups and they have the sweat dripping down their glasses, and it's just, again, an excuse to have some fun.
David, this is brilliant what you're saying, but I am going to have to encourage you to wind up, otherwise we won't have any room left for any
That's
other.
Okay, sorry, I will go really quickly. So that's right. So then I'll just skip on from that. That was the actual last slide. So then the Christmas music videos, again, is like the TikTok style stuff that they're all obsessed with. So hopefully that's given you an idea of that. I'll take one last wee minute of your time to show you then a wee year 8 kind of animation, and that'll finish it off. There's no sound in this, so we'll just talk over it. So again, this is what they were making kind of during lockdown. So the kids have access to everything they need to make films now. So like this was made with a free app on their phone. Again, so like they needed access to a printer and a free app. So you can kind of see the little viruses kind of sort of moving. So this is quite nice as well, in that it just shows you the understanding of an 11-year-old of like what happened kind of during the kind of pandemic. So the virus is replicating, and then it's taking the older people. And then we finish with a little sort of tribute to the NHS. Thank you very much, folks, for your time. If you have any questions, sure, then we can kind of answer them later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. That was such an interesting and enlightening description of what's happening in Northern Ireland. And it's encouraging as well, even though you say it's not happening in every school. It's happening in way more schools than is happening in England. I can say that for sure. So thank you very much for that. We're going to move on quite quickly now because time is running out. I'd like to invite Laura to come and tell us about what's happening in Scotland. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'll just quickly share my screen then. Okay, so my name's Laura Findlay. As Michelle introduced earlier, I'm a project manager at Education Edinburgh. And like my fellow panellists today, I'm going to be talking about how we assess learning in film education. Give you just a really brief bit of context as to who we are at ScreenEd. We're a film education charity. We've been active for 40 years. Those local to the area might remember us as Pilton Video, and to provide a bit of context about the types of learners that we work with, and the diverse range of people that we work with, and the range of programmes that we run, it's best to kind of look to our kind of mission as an org as well. So we're dedicated to filmmaking for everybody, and we deliver qualifications, we deliver programmes that don't have any qualifications attached to them. We do training and production programmes, and it's all about developing and upskilling people's knowledge and skills in filmmaking. So a lot of these opportunities go out to young people, whether that's in a school setting. There are programmes that we do that we work with quite closely with schools and teachers, but we also do adult learning courses. We do learning out with schools as well, and you'll see that in terms of some of the qualifications that I'm going to talk about today that we run out with a school setting, so informal learning. And really the key things for us as an org that surround assessment are things like confidence, well-being, obviously developing knowledge and skills, but developing the learner that we're working with as well, and enabling them to progress onto different kind of learning pathways, whether that's in further or higher education, or if it's kind of access to industry and the realities of access to industry as well, starting off as a runner or getting a placement at a production company, for example. So there's a real mix of opportunities there for a diverse range of age groups that we work with at ScreenEd. And then also to give you a flavour of what my role is, I mentioned I'm a project manager. In the main, I manage a project that has a bit of a long-winded title of the Edinburgh City Film Education Programme. We have various strands to that. I'm not going to talk about that today. I did want to mention it though, because it's not a programme that has a qualification attached to it. So it's a programme that before COVID, we worked in schools. Teachers would learn in parallel with their pupils about filmmaking and all the filmmaking skills, camera, learning about the white balance, getting their hands on the kit, all that kind of thing. So we're about sort of upskilling the teachers in terms of their professional development, and at the same time building their confidence to lead in the learning with their pupils as well. So a lot of how we kind of assess those increase in skills, those increase in confidence for both teachers and young people actually is very similar to what we do on other programmes. There's a real connectedness to the programmes that we run, whether they have qualifications attached to them or not. So that I'm going to talk about the kind of processes around all that and how they impact assessment and how they're important for us to have an overall picture of our learners' development over the course of any programme that they kind of come on to do with us at Screen Ed. I also work as a bit of support for the British Film Institute and Screen Skills National Council for Further Education Qualification, preparing to work in the film industry. It's kind of vocationally minded and focused on industry, and learners have to sort of reflect on a lot of those processes and the realities and challenges of working in industry and working on a set and all those types of things. And we have progression days and all sorts where those from higher education or production companies or directors, those working in industry, come and talk to our young people about, I guess, both the positives and the negatives of working in the industry, the long hours, but also the great kind of creative and collaborative nature of film and all the opportunities that come from working in the film industry. And then lastly, and more recently, I was a film tutor on our Moving Image Arts course. So obviously David's given you a really detailed overview there, which is fantastic. I am not going to hopefully repeat anything that David has said. I've kind of structured my talk to speak around some of the ways that we actually deliver the course. The course that we deliver at Screen Education Edinburgh is the AS level qualification, so it doesn't have all of the components of the GCSE, but it has the portfolio, including the film that they make and all the pre-production documents, and it has the examination, and that's the way that the learners are assessed. So actually we started that course in September of 2020, and we recently wrapped it up about the end of May this year. So it runs for quite a while. The way that we run it at Screen Education Edinburgh is we work with this year we worked with 16 to 25-year-olds, so we actually expanded the age group up a bit to work with a diverse, group of learners in terms of the age group. And it happens out with schools. So we do have learners who are at school and maybe they've done media studies. This might actually sometimes be the first filmmaking course that they've done. We have those that are in college, and we have learners who have been out of education for some time, and this is them coming back into education with the hope of gaining a qualification to then go and progress on to maybe higher education or for career advancement, for example. So there is a kind of real range of a different group of learners within that 16 to 25-year-old age group that we work with. And just to mention as well, we at Screen Education Edinburgh, we're the lead centre in Scotland where the qualification is delivered. So we work with our partners in Inverness, Aberdeen and Glasgow, and there's film organisations there who, again, like us, deliver the qualification out with the school setting. So they'll work with learners that are at school just now, and again, other educational institutions, and also learners who have been out of education for a while. So that was something new to this year in terms of expanding that age group of 16 to 25. And that's one of the things that I'm going to talk about in terms of some of the considerations that we had to take in terms of assessment, because we're working with such a diverse group. So there is a blend of theory and practice on the course, and David mentioned this. They are very well kind of knitted together. It's key to mention that we deliver the course, but as David's kind of outlined, the assessment is set. So the assessment is not set by us at Screen Education Edinburgh. There's assessment criteria already set by the Council for the Curriculum, Examinations and Assessment. So Key to that, of course, for this qualification is the portfolio work that the young people do, and also their assessment, their examination. There's kind of two main components there, but lots of little pieces of assessment therein. So I'm not going to speak directly to that. I'm going to talk about how we deliver the course and how that impacts assessment, and really getting our learners ready and prepared for assessment, and some of the other things that we look at that kind of build a whole picture for our learners. One of the main things that we talk about is experiential learning, so learning through doing. And I think that's one of the great things about filmmaking. So I'll speak to that in a couple of slides. And also some of the challenges as well. In particular, from September 2020, we decided to deliver the course entirely remotely, which you can imagine is a massive challenge for filmmaking. But also just even for the classes where we deal with film theory and history as well, because there is a bit of a disconnect whenever you're delivering virtually. So we had to take that into consideration in terms of how we prepare the learners for assessment, how we're assessing them, all those types of things. So these are some of the considerations and challenges then. I mentioned that the diverse age group of learners that we had this past year and a bit. And so because we've got a real range of different types of learners, those that are much more well-versed in being part of an education system, you know, those that are at school currently would be doing other assessments, other pieces of written work, even if they haven't done a filmmaking course before at school, for example, they're much more used to being assessed and to sitting assessment. And then we have learners who have maybe been out of the educational system for quite a while. So we have to take that into consideration. And I'll talk in the next slide about some of the responses we had to that for this year in particular. And then, of course, for assessment, how well learners are retaining information, how they're progressing in their filmmaking, but also how they're retaining knowledge about some of the theoretical and historical concepts that are part of the Moving Image Arts course. And again, added to that challenge is the sort of remote learning that we underwent this year. There was also the cancellation of examinations this year for the Moving Image Arts course. An alternative assessment was put in place that wasn't mandatory, but we felt was important for the learners to undergo as well. So I'll speak to that slightly too, and how we prepared them for that. So I've got those considerations and challenges to assessment on the left-hand side of this slide here. On the right-hand side, I'm going to briefly speak to some of the things that we did in order to respond to these considerations or challenges. So for that 16 to 25 age group that we kind of expanded the course out for the last year, which has been fantastic, and I think it's been a real positive. We also wanted to consider how in the recruitment process, when we talk in interview and informal conversations with learners hoping to come on the course, about where they're at currently in their relationship to education. And of course, part of that is in their relationship to assessment. So as I mentioned, you will have learners who are in the school system, and perhaps they are more used to being assessed and more used to kind of sitting examinations and doing written work and so on and so forth. Not necessarily, but maybe so. And then learners who are been out with the education system for a while. So with all of our learners, it's a kind of level playing field in terms of chatting to them in the recruitment process and in the very early stages before the course begins, when they've been given a place, and kind of thinking about supports that we can put in place as a team to ensure that they feel as fully supported and comfortable on the course as possible, and prepared for assessment. So that's something that happens at the very early stages. And then in terms of things that we all look at as educators and assessors in tracking and sort of developing learners through any sort of programme or course, how are they retaining information? How are they progressing in their practical filmmaking? Because we're not in a room with them as well this year, we weren't in a room with them, that there was an added challenge to that. You know, we didn't see them with their hands on the kit. We weren't there to have those kind of round table discussions about clips that we'd all just watched and films that we'd all just watched and put screenings and things on for them in the same way. So there was lots of things, including the social environment, that we really felt would have an impact on preparedness for assessment and also how we would assess as tutors. Are they ready for assessment? How are they progressing on the course? And so on and so forth. So the supports that we put in place were the addition of one-to-one sessions scheduled throughout key points in the course with our learners. They would speak directly with tutors, out with class sessions, so that we could kind of glean how they're doing, how they're feeling about the course, things that they feel challenging, things that they feel that where their strengths lie, things that they maybe feel slightly nervous about, and we can talk through how we can support them through certain elements. And I should say, I did not deliver this course by myself. I did it in partnership with a colleague, Brian Robinson, who handled the practical side of things, and I did the theory side of things, and then we kind of did joint sessions as well.
Laura, so sorry to interrupt, particularly at this sensitive moment in the presentation, but if you could talk for another minute or two, that'll give us enough time for everything else. So I'm really sorry to hurry you along.
No, that's okay. You're fine. I'll just go on for one more minute. Thanks, Michelle. Key to that was all the stuff around it. You know, social nights, because we couldn't meet face to face, for example, and we were running this remotely. We wanted the group to gel, and we wanted them to gel because they would be more confident in speaking when we did class tasks, when we did sessions together, and supporting one another through assessment as well, being aware that they are all going through the same experience. They all have to kind of do their portfolio work. They all have to kind of independently make their films and sit their alternative assessments. So social nights that we did, Halloween party online and Christmas quizzes, all these things you think are perhaps not related to assessment, but for us it's a whole jigsaw really that is important for us to assess how our learners are feeling on the course, and that they feel part of a little kind of filmmaking community, which I think really helps them to be prepared for those more rigorous traditional areas of assessment that are required in order for them to kind of get a grade on a qualification. And then experiential learning, so reflection and repetition. They would be sent away to do tasks and come back and reflect on it as a group. All those more kind of traditional elements of homework and all that kind of thing, so, you know, gave an evidence base for the way in which we assessed the learners this year. I do want to make one point clear though before I finish up, is that we were very mindful of anything extra that we put in terms of the way we assessed and evaluated our learners, not providing a bias to the way that we graded their work. There's key criteria and there's marking schemes from the examination board which we follow. But for us, it's in terms of a filmmaking organisation, it's crucial to support our learners in lots of different ways, and also for them to understand that as they go through, they're kind of self-evaluating. That's a really quick picture of the Halloween night. They're self-evaluating, they're reflecting on their own learning, so that there's not so much weight attached to a grade. We all want them to get fantastic grades, and we do have really great track record of getting good grades, you know, that our learners getting good grades, but we want them to understand their experience to be more than just attached to a grade, that it's all about the skills that they've learned, and key to that, the confidence that they've built, and the feedback and the way that we kind of track through tracking increase of skills, through evaluation processes that we do, the one-to-ones, the informal discussions, the supports right even before they begin the course. We've had great feedback on all those things, building confidence in our learners to be prepared for assessment, but also for them to reflect and assess themselves and understand that they've overcome challenges and they've learned skills to be able to progress. So for me, it was really, I couldn't untangle those things about assessment. How do we assess learning in film education? It's not just how we assess, what we're assessing, and also why we're assessing it as well, that was crucial to the way we work at Screen Education Edinburgh. And I'll finish up there. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Laura. You've raised so many really important issues around the sensitive handling of learners, and you know, lots of resonance there with practices in Santé de Jeunesse and why we are assessing the things we're assessing in the way that we're assessing them. So, but in order to kind of move things forward, John, I'm so sorry that, you know, we're going to have to hurry things along at the end, but yes. please do tell us what's happening in Barcelona.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to present or explain our project. before explaining how we do the assessment process, I think that it's important to explain a little bit our project, Cinema in Course, because everything is related. Also, our philosophy, I would say, has to do with the way that we assess. So I am going to yes. So Cinema in Course is a film education program started in 2005. So first, I am going to show our website. So I am not going to read everything. We don't have the time, but if you are interested on more information, you can just go look on our website. And so it's a film education program started in 2005 in Catalonia, and nowadays we are doing that in Catalonia, Madrid, Basque Country, Galicia, and Spain. We are doing also some activities in Chile. I see that Felipe Correa is listening us, so hey, ¿qué tal? And so he's our partner in Chile, and he's here. And we are doing also in Germany, in Brandenburg, and in Mexico, and sometimes also in Argentina as well. We have two main purposes. So fostering the discovery of cinema understood as art. This is very important. So we understand film or cinema as art, which is not obvious always, as art, as creation and culture by children and young people. And the second important thing is that we have the purpose of developing the pedagogical potential of cinematographic creation in the educational context. So we want to use cinema and all these processes that are part of the cinema to propose new methodology in the schools, in the formal education. So our project, we work together with filmmakers. So every week, the program is all the school year, and every week, 3 hours in the school hours, one filmmaker goes to school and works together with the teachers. So that is some specific characteristic of our project, that we work together with teachers, but also with filmmakers all together. So each one has different skills, and we try to combine them in our project. And also our methodology is based on the combination of the link, the creative practices with the film viewing. So we analyze in the classroom different film fragments or excerpts together with the filmmaker and the teachers, and based on that, what they understand, what they learn, what they have seen, they have to do small practices with their hand phones, so with the technique that they have at home, so to say. Very important is for us is the teacher training. I think that is going to be clear at the end why it's important that we work together with teachers and we have this teachers training. It's also important to say that our project is developed or conceived by teachers. I mean, we work together with them. It means that it's not that we know what they have to do, and they do. It's in the other way around. We think that the teachers are the ones that know how we should work in the schools. So they develop together with us the project. So they are key. They play a key role in the project. And also, we define ourselves as a laboratory of applied research. So we analyze all the things that we do, all the methodologies, and we try to create materials, pedagogical materials in film education that all the schools that are interested on that can use. So we have all these, so I have to say, we do workshops. So students develop with the students between 8 and 18. So we work in primary schools, secondary schools, and high schools. And as I said, are conducted by teachers and filmmakers during the school hour. And in Spain, film education is not part of the curriculum. That means that we use other subjects like language, literature, art, music to do our project. So the teachers that work with us, they are not specialists in film, or they don't have this training before the project. So we start analyzing small fragments and doing a small, based on that, doing a small exercise. And the methodology develops in a way that at the end, they have to do a documentary film or fiction film. They have all, as I said, the students have the control of the process. No? They work together and we help them. So it's not about what we know and they have to learn from us, but we work together with them. And we say that we all together, all the classroom, the teacher, we travel together and we learn from each other, because teachers, they have some skills, but they don't have all the skills. Filmmakers, they have some skills, but they don't have all the skills. And the students, we learn also from the students. So it's this collaborative way of developing something as a group. As I said, we have this teacher training. We do teachers training for our teachers, so to say, the teachers that work with us, but also we do teachers training for institutions that they want to do film education programs, or we do also in other countries. And as I said, all these methodologies, we develop materials, and these materials are based on the analysis of our meetings with the teachers. So we do something, we do some experimental practices, and we analyze that, and we think how we can adapt that for everybody. I mean, in schools, that they don't have to be Catalan schools or Spanish school, but more that can adapt into any context. Everything that the students do, we publish here in the workshop diary. So all the small exercise, we call them shots of the world, that are filming from the window and small and also the film analysis that are published. Here you can have a look. Now, because it's in the end of the school year, the last articles are about shootings, because they are shooting their films. So you can see here that are mostly articles about their shootings. Film analysis. So how we do assess what happens or the students. So first of all, we have to say that we don't believe in exams. So we don't think that we can put a mark at the end of the school year, because for us, the important is the process, also in the filmmaking. So we don't evaluate the final film of the group, if it's good, if it's not good. For us, it's interesting what happens every week and how we travel together and how we have this experience and what happens each week. So we have developed a system of assessment that I'm going to try to explain now. So very important for us is that each student becomes a notebook, which is not so say the normal one is. Cool.
Well, I think we just lost you there, John. If you could just repeat that bit.
The notebook, did you hear me?
No, we can see it, but we just lost the recording slightly. The audio went, at least it did for me.
Okay. No, I am going to say that we have different, as I said, we do in the primary school, secondary school, in the high school, and we don't put marks in the normal way. Of course, in the primary school, it's not that important. I mean, they can live with that, and secondary school as well, but in the high school, the system says you need marks, because that defines, they go to if they want to go to university, they need the marks. So this is where we have, so our methodology of how we can assess the students. And I am going to explain one example of a high school in Barcelona, and they are 16, 17 years old. And I'm going to explain what they have done, or what we have done with them. And do you listen me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, we can.
Okay. So each student becomes a notebook that they can use in the school hours, but also, so this is an example of a film excerpt by Jonas Trueba, La Reconquista, and they have seen that in the classroom all together with the film, and they have discussed what they have seen. And this is a notebook of a student where you can see that they have, it's in Catalan, so explains that there are three, the sequence and drawings and the edit, and they explain what they have seen, following some criteria. These criteria are not given for us. We don't use theory. It's not about film theory. It's about what we have seen. And this answer can, so this question can answer everyone. I mean, it's about what you have seen. And you have seen, I don't know, light, time, the framing. So we start from the basics of the film language. This is an example, and they are like, sorry, each student writes down what they have seen, and then we discuss that in the group. There is no correct or not correct answers. It's about what you have seen, and we discussed about that. This is another example, also the same. You can see this is from by José Luis Guerin in Construcción, and you have seen that students have analyzed this fragment, this sequence. Drawings with different ideas. For example, is the sound. He's describing the sound, what he heard, and also the light. How is the light? So we do that every week with a filmmaker and with a teacher. Based on this analysis, they do also practical exercise. I am not going to show them, but they are these shots of the world. We call it 1 minute shots about when they put in practice what they have seen: light, framing, time, and camera position. There is no more. There is not more. I mean, this is filmmaking, to pay attention to the light, to the framing, and the time that you film. So this is the basics of filmmaking. And sorry. So how we do assess that? So we decide, so when I say we, I say the students decide the items that they think that are important by analyzing film often as excerpts. So it's not given for us, but they decide and they write down a document all together when they define what is important. And for example, is sorry, it's not what I wanted to show. Is this one? For example, they have to, which are the decisions of the filmmaker by filming that, the light, the type of optic, if the camera was moving or not, the light, the sound, the colors, the spaces that we can see, and the edit. The thing is that they decide that, and this document is for self-evaluation. So each student fulfill this document not every week, but regularly. And then they discuss that with the group. So, so the first time is a reflection of what I have seen. And if I have seen that and these items, if I can follow these items, by analyzing a film.
Hi, John.
Sorry,
yeah? This is really getting down to the proper details. If you could wind up in maybe 1 minute, we'll have a time for a discussion. Thank you very much. Thanks.
You're welcome. So it's the same by the practices. And the second step of this assessment is this co-evaluation. That means that I have some photos here. So, sorry. So each student write down what they have seen, film analysis, and they discuss with a colleague what they have written, and they comment. So this is, for example, a document, and this post-it are the feedback of the colleague, of the student. So this way of assessment is a process of knowing as well, or learning. It's not about given, they discuss and they improve. And in this post-it is how you can improve your analysis. And of course, in this dialogue, they are learning and they are assessing, so to say. There is an assessment in there. And the last, and this is the main document. So the teachers has a document where each student, I delete the names, because this is, so to say, is private. So each school develops its own document. So this is a specific example, but other schools, they do the same, but in a different way. They find their way to do that. So there is here the commentary of the teacher, what if they participate, if they are creative, if they are proactive. And here we can see what the other students wrote about the other students, so to say. So we have this document with a lot of items where we discuss with the students and write with them the assessment, the assess. So what they deserve, so to say. And this is important that because in this high school, we have to put marks. We are by law, we have to. So you can see here that the teacher has a mark. So 10 is maximum in Spain, but we do that because we have to do that. But the most important thing is this. See, we have an agreement of all of teachers that even if they have to put marks, they have to write a report about what happens in this school year. And this is together with the students, we dialogue with them, and they put their own mark, so to say, because they recognize if they have worked a lot, or they have learned something, or if they were, I don't know. So this, at the end, we have all this process of dialogue, feedback, and common learning. So this is the way that we assess. So at the end, there is no exam. And I have to say that these students, they don't learn what they have to learn in the curriculum, so to say. But then at the end of the school year, they have the state exam before the university. And normally they get better marks than the students that they don't participate in the project, and they learn film education or audiovisual culture, like in a traditional way of theory, learning, how many filmmakers you know, or this more traditional way. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's quite something, John, I have to say. I mean, I did know something about Cinema in Courses work, but to see it in such detail, it's quite something to give the students that amount of agency and trust. And I can see that we've got a wide kind of spectrum of approaches going on in this panel. I think what we'll do, because of the constraints of time, is we'll go directly to some of the questions that have come up already, either in the Q&A box or in the chat. And as Jamie has said, if it's okay with the panelists, would like to overrun slightly. We can go till about 22 or 5:45. If anyone has to go, please don't feel bad about that. We're sorry to see you go, but it is being recorded, so you can catch it at a later stage. So if we can go directly to a question, I think that came up in the chat here. There's one from Tim Flood here, a question for Laura, which is actually quite a practical question. Could you give an indication of the number of people taking the MIA course for each year for the past 3 years?
Probably not for the past 3 years, because I wasn't at Screen Ed that long. But certainly I know we take a minimum of 10 and then probably a maximum of like maybe 16, 17 learners. So this year we worked with 10 or 11 actually learners. So we're aware that, you know, that's very, very different to a classroom size where you maybe wouldn't actually have the ability to do some of the supports that we put in place, like one-to-ones. For example, if you had a class of 32 learners, that's just insane in terms of capacity. So we know that we have that luxury, I guess, of being able to offer some of these additional supports. But yeah, it's usually around those numbers.
Okay, I hope that was that answered your question, Tim. And we also had another one that's David's actually answered in the Q&A, but Scott was asking, I don't know if you could expand on that. And this might also resonate with other panelists as well, the ways in which the kinds of assessment practices that you put in place affect other kind of ecologies in the school system. David, I know you've given quite a fulsome response here, but it might be useful for you to give us a bit more detail on that.
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks, Scott, for the question. Yes, moving image arts is taught by a very broad range of teachers. Exactly like John was saying, that there's no such thing as a film or as a moving image arts teacher. It's taught by teachers who have an interest or a passion for film education. So then, but they're from broad range. The ones I've listed there, the obvious ones are art and English are the two main places that it's taught from, but then it could be from music, from ICT. We had a really sort of creative technology teacher who built really sort of elaborate film rigs and things with his class and used those. So those films were very interesting. But the second part of that was, as part of that revised curriculum in Northern Ireland, then they were trying to work out ways that we could kind of break down boundaries between subjects. So then we can teach group projects. So an example of something like that was that we had worked together with the music department. So the music department had created little sort of motifs in music. And then sort of they brought that music motif to art, and then we animated those with kind of sort of moving colored shapes and things to try and match the thing. So I think that's kind of what Scott was sort of getting at in some ways. Is yes, it can be used as a device to break down the boundaries between subjects, and it's particularly sort of useful at Key Stage 3, that sort of like lower age sort of secondary school pupils.
Mm. Yeah, great. Well, that's really good to hear. Does anyone want to have any comment to make in response to that? Whether their particular practices have reached into other areas and affected other parts of the system, the curriculum? John, did you want to say anything?
Yeah. Well, I have to say that normally we work in schools, normally with a filmmaker, one school group, because we don't have the money to pay filmmakers, but we consider that the school, each school is participating. So even if we are working with one group, this project has to be decided by the direction of the school. And we try that we have schools that are working with us for 15 years. So all the teachers have done the project, and they use our methodology in other moments of in other subjects, in their work, because as I said, we want to. I know that sounds a little bit pretentious, but we want to change the way that schools work, so to say, or the system, so to say. So we work with teachers that they agree with that, of course. And normally we have schools that they work like that in all of their subjects, even in biology. So for us, it's very important, and it has a huge impact in the school. Normally, not always, but there are small schools also in small villages, and change the way that they understand what learning or the school as institution should be. So yes, had a huge impact.
Yeah. I'm guessing that doesn't come as a surprise to a group of film educators that are, you know, in the audience as well. But it's so great to see it actually in practice and actually working. Laszlo and Anette, I'm aware that we haven't heard your voice for a while, and what you were describing seems to be a kind of a mixture of film studies and film production in a you know, highly elaborated kind of program. I'm just wondering if that exists very much within its own subject, or whether indeed that has also affected the ways that other subjects are assessed.
It affects other, or rather they would prefer if it would affect them, but the system is quite closed and it's restricted by the authorities, so they can't just change the assessment on other subjects. But the drama and also the visual arts are very keen to do that, involve more practical side into the assessment. I mean, using, and also by surprise, or not by surprise, but the history and literature also, they want to do creative writing, and they plan to do it, but they can't just change it. Even so, it would be so nice, the whole education system could be reformed by that, but it's not working in that fast. So unfortunately, we have to wait for that. But as far as we see, it affects other subjects and other areas of learning, but not as fast as we prefer.
That sounds so familiar to me in my particular locale. Yeah, okay. Well, you know, some of us have talked a little bit about the ways in which the less visible skills can be evaluated, appreciated, celebrated. And I'm just wondering, it's a real kind of, I don't know, it's one of the key questions of film education, how to, and should we be doing this? Should we be measuring the film sensibility of our pupils, and how do you do that? If anyone has any answers, put it on a postcard and send it to my address. But I'm thinking, you know, that some of Jon's practices in the Abauku, what I really loved about that was the analog approach, you know, the writing out and the post-it notes, and how that really makes for a collaborative kind of effort, and the students can work together and dialogue over that. I mean, of course, there are ways of doing that digitally with post-it notes, aren't there, these days? But I think there's a value, isn't there, in the concrete self-evaluation of their work. And I think that's something that everybody is talked a little bit about as well. Does anyone want to say anything about that, the less visible skills? Even in the
I'll
chat.
let Annette go, because Annette, you've got your hand up.
Go ahead.
Okay, but so I just wanted to say that the evaluation is not just for the system or for the outside world. It's also for the students, for the children, who are very keen to get any response or any reflection for their work as well. So it's very important for them to see a criteria where they can see how they can do the work or not do the work. But it's not the kind of, because we are really start to stay away from the examination, how we know it already, but it's the old school system, but we have critical views of it for a reason, of course, but it can be different. I mean, what we use for the assessment, we describe it, and also it's focusing for understanding, focusing for the skills that not marked from A to, I don't know, so not marked just for 4 marks, 4 or 5 marks, but they are percentages. We can measure the understanding in a way we described. So it's very important, I think, just for feedback, just to see how they develop skills, how they improve, they learn by learning, by doing things. So I think it's very important, the assessment, and not just for the reason giving mark at the end of the year. It's more important for what I just already said. So
yeah. And I think we have another question from our colleagues in Chile. Where was that one, Jamie? Excuse me a moment. Just trying to see.
So the question comes from Felipe Correa, who I believe is involved.
Oh yeah.
It's our colleague.
Yeah. And who has written for the Film Education Journal before. And Felipe asks the panel a question for everyone. In what way do you think the assessments in your film education projects contribute to student learning?
Should I just repeat that? In what way do you think the assessments in your film education projects contribute to student learning? So is that around the kind of unique affordances of film education learning?
I mean, I think, and David's probably much better placed to answer this question than I am in terms of examination for MIA. But the thing I like about the assessment for MIA is that there's a lot of reflection. So, for example, in the things like their director's notebook, it provides a kind of journal for them to reflect on their processes. So again, it just comes right back to that element of what Annette and John, and I think everybody's been saying, is that any level of assessment that's given actually has a reflective aspect to it, in which the learner's actually thinking about, well, what is it that I did learn and what have I adapted and changed? And actually that's not always present in all forms of assessment. And I think it encourages that reflective process. I mean, we know ourselves through our own learning processes that any time you go on, you know, in your kind of, when we're back in education, when we've been doing exams ourselves and things to get where we are now, we probably don't reflect necessarily on what we've learned. We're just trying to retain and actually get to the end point. So I think those are some of the things, certainly for, as an educator, that for working on MIA this year, I think work really well. And the students also feed that into feedback as well in our evaluation processes we do at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's, you know, it's the valuing of what you think matters. I think that's probably accounts for a lot of its success. Were you going to say something there, David?
Yeah, sure. It was just to add to that, and across all of the things that you know, Laszlo and Annette and John's scheme as well, is that they are very fit for purpose for like sort of guiding kids to the screen industries, because it's that collaborative kind of approach. So that's, I really like John's kind of idea, where they sort of they actually sort of help each other and contribute to each other's kind of work in that way. And again, in the director's notebook, it's very much part of a team kind of experience, the way they do those things. So I think that's what the question is kind of asking is, you know, like, how do they sort of contribute to the student learning? But it's all about, you know, like it's reflection and self-reflection, and whether they go into the film industry or not, those are great skills to have, great things to sort of to encourage.
Yeah, they're great skills, great critical thinking, creative thinking, and of course the structures, such as they are in certain places, will say, well, what number can we put on that, you know? So, but I love that idea of the students giving themselves numbers, you know, Jon's context. That's quite unique. Okay, does anyone else have anything else they want to say to wrap up our journey through film assessment, which has been utterly fascinating? I've got about 64 questions actually on my bits of paper, which will never get asked, sadly. There's one here from that I was in my conversations with Scott Donaldson, which was something around if you don't assess it, does it not count? So what can we say in response to that? We are living, certainly in England, in a regime of testing and assessment, which is, in my view, highly indicative of the kind of political situations we're all living in right now, and which perhaps is for another time. But it's we were talking earlier also about Natalie's the challenges faced by her program, and I asked that question about the ways in which this reflects arts and humanities as a kind of dying breed in so many ways, and it's constantly being eroded. So I'm just wondering if film education can, kind of champion this cause and, as you were saying, have effects in other areas in positive ways in the curriculum. So maybe we could just stop there as a kind of, call to arms. So I think even Natalie was talking about the origins of Centre Jeunesse being a militant. There was a militant activism around it, so which was really interesting, which perhaps needs to be reactivated. Who knows? Okay, I think we'll stop there. And I just want to give a massive thank you to David, to Jon, to Laura, to Lancelot, to Annette, and the Film Education Journal team for this opportunity, and let's do it all again soon. Thank you so much.